I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. Ghosts, spirits, and haunted houses were the stuff of urban legends and horror movies, nothing more. But that changed when I accepted an invitation to spend a weekend at the infamous Baker Mansion in Pennsylvania. The Baker Mansion, with its grandiose architecture and rich history, had always intrigued me. Built in the early 19th century by Elias Baker, a wealthy ironmaster, it stood as a testament to the opulence of its time. However, what drew more visitors than its historical significance were the rumors of it being haunted by the spirit of Hetty Baker, Elias's daughter. Local folklore whispered tales of her tragic love story and her untimely death, painting a picture of a restless soul unable to leave the place she called home. As a journalist with a penchant for unraveling mysteries, I couldn't resist the chance to delve into the stories surrounding the mansion. The invitation came from the current owner, Mr. Thompson, who had recently inherited the property and was keen on restoring its reputation. He hoped a well-documented investigation might put the ghost stories to rest once and for all. Driving up the winding road that led to the mansion, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The trees, dense and ancient, formed a canopy overhead, casting long shadows that danced in the evening light. When the mansion finally came into view, it took my breath away. It stood tall and imposing, its facade weathered but still magnificent, exuding an air of forgotten grandeur. Mr. Thompson greeted me at the door, his warm smile a stark contrast to the mansion's eerie aura. "Welcome to Baker Mansion," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I hope you're ready for a weekend of ghost hunting." I laughed, more to ease my nerves than anything else. "We'll see if there's any truth to these stories," I replied, glancing at the mansion's dark windows, which seemed to watch me with silent anticipation. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of rooms, each filled with antique furniture and artifacts that spoke of a bygone era. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and musty upholstery. As Mr. Thompson led me through the halls, he shared the mansion's history, pointing out portraits of the Baker family that lined the walls. We stopped before a particularly striking painting of a young woman with auburn hair and sad, piercing eyes. "That's Hetty Baker," Mr. Thompson said softly. "She fell in love with a man her father disapproved of. When he forbade the marriage, Hetty was heartbroken. She never recovered and died young, some say of a broken heart." "Is that when the haunting started?" I asked, intrigued. "Yes," he replied. "There have been countless reports of strange occurrences, footsteps echoing in empty corridors, whispered voices, and sightings of Hetty's ghost wandering the halls. Some even claim to have felt her presence, a cold touch on their skin." That night, after Mr. Thompson retired to his quarters, I decided to explore the mansion on my own. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, I wandered through the dark, silent halls, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The mansion was a maze, with its twisting corridors and hidden alcoves. Each room I entered seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something to happen. I found myself drawn to the grand staircase, its ornate banister gleaming faintly in the dim light. As I ascended the steps, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At the top of the stairs, a chill ran down my spine, and I turned abruptly, expecting to see someone, or something, behind me. But there was nothing, only the empty hall stretching into darkness. I continued my exploration, making my way to Hetty's old bedroom. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a room frozen in time. The bed was neatly made, the curtains drawn, and an old-fashioned vanity stood by the window, its mirror reflecting the moonlight. I approached the vanity, my eyes drawn to a small, intricately carved music box. On a whim, I opened the box, and a hauntingly beautiful melody filled the room. As the music played, I felt an inexplicable sadness wash over me. It was as if Hetty's sorrow had permeated the very walls of the mansion, reaching out to anyone who dared to listen. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and I felt a cold breeze brush past me. The music box stopped abruptly, and the room fell silent. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and saw a shadowy figure standing by the doorway. It was a woman, her form translucent and ethereal, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes, filled with an indescribable sadness, locked onto mine. I stood frozen, unable to move or speak, as she slowly faded away, leaving me alone in the cold, dark room. My hands trembling, I closed the music box and backed out of the room, my mind racing. I had come to Baker Mansion to debunk the ghost stories, but now I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about the supernatural. Was it really Hetty Baker's spirit that I had seen? Or was my mind playing tricks on me, influenced by the mansion's eerie atmosphere and tragic history? As I made my way back to my room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of my encounter with the haunted legacy of the Baker mansion. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of unease. The events of the previous night lingered in my mind, casting a shadow over the bright, sunny day. Determined to understand what I had experienced, I decided to dig deeper into Hetty Baker's story. After breakfast, I made my way to the mansion's library, a vast room filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the faint smell of old paper. Mr. Thompson had mentioned that the Baker family's journals and letters were stored there, and I hoped they might offer some insights into Hetty's life and death. I spent hours poring over the yellowed pages, immersing myself in the Baker family's history. Hetty's diary, in particular, was a treasure trove of information. Her entries were filled with the hopes and dreams of a young woman, her love for a man named William, and the heartbreak that followed her father's refusal to bless their union. One entry, dated just weeks before her death, stood out to me. March 3, 1849, Father forbids me from seeing William again. My heart aches with a pain I cannot describe. I feel as if a part of me has died. I do not know how I will go on without him. Reading her words, I felt a deep sadness for Hetty. It was clear that her love for William was genuine, and her father's strictness had left her devastated. The more I read, the more I understood the depth of her sorrow and the circumstances that might have led to her untimely demise. As the day turned to evening, I decided to take a break and explore the mansion's grounds. The gardens, once meticulously maintained, were now overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. I wandered along the gravel paths, taking in the beauty of the neglected landscape. The air was cool and crisp, and for a moment, I felt a sense of peace. That peace was shattered when I heard the faint sound of a woman's voice calling my name. I froze, my heart racing, and listened intently. The voice was soft and distant, but unmistakable. It was the same voice I had heard in Hetty's room the night before. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, only the rustling of leaves in the breeze. I turned slowly, scanning the garden for any sign of movement. My eyes fell on a figure standing at the edge of the garden, partially obscured by the shadows of the trees. It was Hetty. She stood there, her pale face expressionless, her eyes fixed on me. I took a step forward, my mind racing with questions, but as I did, she vanished, leaving me alone in the fading light. I hurried back to the mansion, my thoughts in turmoil. It was clear that Hetty's spirit was not at rest, and I needed to understand why. As I entered the library, I found Mr. Thompson waiting for me, a concerned look on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, noticing my agitation. "I saw her again," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "In the garden. She called my name." Mr. Thompson's expression grew serious. "Hetty's spirit has been restless for years. Many believe she is searching for something, or someone, to help her find peace. What can we do?" I asked, desperate for answers. "I don't know," he admitted. "But perhaps if we can uncover the truth about her death, we might be able to help her move on." With renewed determination, I resolved to continue my investigation. The pieces of Hetty's story were beginning to come together, but I knew there was more to uncover. The truth, I hoped, would not only put an end to the haunting but also bring peace to a soul that had been trapped for far too long. That night, as I prepared for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The air in the mansion seemed charged with a strange energy, as if the walls themselves were alive with secrets. Determined to confront whatever was haunting Hetty's spirit, I set up a video camera in my room, hoping to capture any paranormal activity. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of Hetty and her tragic story. Just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard a faint whisper. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to jolt me awake. I sat up, straining to hear. The whisper came again, this time clearer, "Help me." Heart pounding, I grabbed my flashlight and followed the sound. It led me down the dark hallway, past the grand staircase, and into the east wing of the mansion. I found myself standing in front of a door that I hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, and a dim light flickered from within. I pushed the door open and entered what appeared to be an old study. The room was cluttered with papers, books, and various trinkets. In the center of the room stood a large oak desk, and on it, an oil lamp cast a ghostly glow. As I approached the desk, I noticed a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. I picked them up and began to read. They were love letters, written by Hetty to William. Each letter was filled with heartfelt words of longing and despair, but one letter, dated just days before her death, caught my attention. "Dearest William, I fear my father will never allow us to be together. He grows angrier with each passing day, and I am terrified of what he might do. I cannot live without you. If we cannot be together in this life, then I pray we will be reunited in the next. My heart ached for Hetty. It was clear that her father's disapproval had driven her to the brink of despair. As I placed the letters back on the desk, I felt a sudden chill. The temperature in the room plummeted, and I turned to see Hetty's ghostly figure standing by the window. "Help me," she whispered again, her eyes pleading. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "How can I help you?" I asked. She pointed to a painting on the wall, a portrait of Elias Baker. Beneath the painting was a small, locked drawer. I searched the desk for a key and found it hidden among the papers. With trembling hands, I unlocked the drawer and pulled it open. Inside was a leather-bound journal. As I flipped through its pages, I realized it was Elias Baker's private journal. The entries detailed his growing frustration and anger over Hetty's defiance. One entry, in particular, stood out. March 5, 1849, Hetty continues to defy me. Her love for that man has poisoned her mind. I cannot allow her to bring shame upon our family. I have locked her in her room until she comes to her senses. If she refuses to obey, then I fear I must take drastic measures to protect our honor. A cold dread settled over me as I read the final entry, dated the day before Hetty's death. March 10, 1849, Hetty remains stubborn. I cannot break her spirit. She has left me no choice. Tonight, I will put an end to this madness. It was clear now that Elias had taken extreme measures to keep Hetty and William apart. The truth of Hetty's death was more sinister than I had imagined. I turned to Hetty's ghost, my heart heavy with sorrow. "Your father. He." She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "He poisoned me," she whispered. "To save the family's honor." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the full extent of Hetty's suffering. She had been trapped, not only by her father's cruelty but also by the very walls of the mansion she once called home. "What can I do to help you find peace?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. "Tell my story," she said softly. "Let the world know the truth." With a sense of purpose, I vowed to honor Hetty's request. I would uncover the full truth and share it with the world, in hopes that it would finally bring peace to her restless spirit. As I left the study, I felt a sense of resolve, knowing that the journey to uncovering the truth about Hetty Baker was far from over. The following day, I called a local historian, Dr. Alice Monroe, who specialized in the history of the Baker family. I shared with her my discoveries, and she agreed to meet me at the mansion to examine the documents. Dr. Monroe arrived with an air of authority, her eyes alight with curiosity and concern. As we sifted through the journals and letters together, she confirmed my findings. "It's clear that Elias Baker went to great lengths to maintain his family's reputation," she said, shaking her head. "But poisoning his own daughter? It's monstrous." Dr. Monroe suggested we contact the local historical society and the press to share Hetty's story. We spent the day compiling our evidence, preparing a comprehensive report to ensure the truth was finally revealed. That evening, as I sat in my room, exhausted but determined, I heard the whisper again. "Thank you." I turned to see Hetty standing by the window, her form more solid than before, a gentle smile on her face. "You've given me hope," she said softly. "But there is one last thing I need." "What is it?" I asked, eager to help. "Find William's letters," she replied. "They hold the key to my release." With this final clue, I knew my work wasn't done. I retraced my steps to the study, searching through the documents for any mention of William's letters. After hours of searching, I found a hidden compartment in the desk containing a bundle of letters from William to Hetty. Reading through them, I discovered William's unwavering love and his desperate attempts to contact Hetty after her father's decree. The final letter revealed his plan to elope with her, a plan that was thwarted by Elias's intervention. Armed with this new evidence, I contacted William's descendants, hoping they could provide more context. They were shocked but cooperative, sharing family stories that corroborated our findings. Together, we presented our case to the local authorities, demanding that Hetty's story be acknowledged and that her grave be properly marked. The news spread quickly, and soon the mansion was abuzz with journalists and historians. The truth about Hetty Baker's tragic fate was finally brought to light, and her story touched the hearts of many. That night, as I stood in Hetty's room, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The air was different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from the mansion. Hetty appeared one last time, her spirit now radiant and peaceful. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have set me free." As she faded into the light, I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Hetty Baker's spirit was finally at rest, and the mansion's haunting had come to an end. Leaving Baker Mansion the next morning, I felt a deep sense of closure. The skeptic in me had been transformed by the journey, and I knew I would never forget the experience. Hetty's story was no longer a mere legend, it was a testament to the enduring power of love and the importance of truth. The Baker Mansion stood as a reminder of the past, but it was no longer a place of sorrow and unrest. Hetty's spirit had found peace, and with it, the mansion had been reborn.